Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot, and welcome to the May Thank You reading. So, this is the one where I go ahead and do the reading, and then I pick all the cards up and shuffle them right in front of you and go ahead and do the extended all in one video. So, part of the thank you is that there is going to be a free extended included in the video. And so, I just like to do that once a month just to kind of say thank you for being the wonderful collective that you are. And I look forward to this reading because I've also noticed that some really interesting things tend to come out here. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. It will be a what wants to come out about this situation and about you sort of reading, a general reading specifically custom made for this collective. So if you just happen to be stumbling upon this for your first reading, if this applies to you and if it resonates, you may want to get in there and look at some of the other videos and just kind of see what other messages have come out so far, because they're all very much connected. So I'm going to read for you today with the Alice in Wonderland Tarot. I'm going to use that as my main deck. Then I'm going to clarify with the Modern Witch Tarot, and I think I'm going to use the Starry Beginnings Oracle cards. So I have another deck I might sub in. We'll see what happens, but I think these are the ones I want to use. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll first look at just sort of the energy that's happening between the two of you, as we often do with that energetic and emotional backdrop kind of peppered in there as well for perspective. And remember in the last reading that communication had come up. And so we were kind of looking at, King of Flowers. Okay. We were looking at the nature of the potential communication that you might see from your person. And it felt like there was this sort of passionate moving forward, potentially even a vulnerable, nice sort of conversation that could happen here. But also maybe something that could be relatively short-lived. Because it's whenever that tower that's kind of coming for them, whenever that hits them, it's going to be necessary for them to take a little bit of a break to go into that hermit cave. So we've got the Four of Teacups. This is a sense of a little bit of disappointment, or it's second guessing oneself. It really feels more like second guessing oneself than it does disappointment, but there is some disappointment in that second guessing themselves. It feels like it's your person, and it feels like they wish they had done something sooner, because that would make it a little less awkward. So we've got the Five of Spears, and I thought, we have another one here as well. 10 of Hedgehogs in the reverse. Okay, so teacups are cups. That's water energy. We've got all of the suits out here. Flowers are fire energy in this deck. Spears are air energy, and hedgehogs are earth. So with the 10 of Hedgehogs, we're seeing a change in their home environment or their living environment, whatever. It could be something that's more relevant to their workplace or someplace that impacts their life. So it could even be kind of a social circle type of change. But this is something that is shifting, and it is not, I would say, not the same shift that we saw. I guess maybe it was last week we were really seeing something that was kind of moving. This is a different movement, a different shift, but I'm not sure it's as big or considerable as the other one. With the Five of Spears in the reverse, I get the sense that the shift doesn't bother them quite as much, but it does kind of change the way they live their life a little bit. Still feeling like missed opportunity over here. King of the Flowers, a lot of passion backing it up, so there's likely to be some sort of, this will amount to something. I cannot guarantee that you're going to see it. We'll see what happens here with this communication. I know that there's a heavy effort, or there's a heavy energy around communication that has really started to come out, like I said, since yesterday's reading. And it was interesting too, because we were kind of looking at what kind of communication you might see. And it's like you might hear from them in a little bit different of a context than you usually do. So it might be that you end up sitting across the table from them, and you're sitting outside at a beautiful day at a restaurant, and there was a nice visual of that, and I might even have pulled that piece out as the snippet that I stuck on social media. So I usually listen through there, and I'm like, what is the piece that stands out to me the most that I would want to know before tuning into a reading? And so that's usually what I put out there. Okay, so we've got the Three of Wands, the Seven of Wands, and the Queen of Cups. Three of Wands. Do we get the Knight of Pentacles? We do not. Even though there is some inconsistency, we're not supposed to pull that card. The Three of Wands in the reverse, this is the prerequisites that they have not fulfilled. So this is the reason that they're feeling that sense of disappointment or that missed opportunity, that something that hasn't been done, and they're feeling like they maybe have missed that opportunity to get it done. They certainly have missed that early opportunity to do things, and it's caused them to lose some confidence. That's what this Seven of Wands is all about. It's feeling like there's less confidence, but feeling like there's a lot of love, and the awareness of this love, the happiness that's there, but not quite being sure what to think about it or how to handle it when it should happen to arrive. So that's what we've got here with the Six of Pentacles. That's the equal give and take of energy. And in this case, it's a matter of having some idea of what that would mean. But with the Ten of Cups, it needs to stay for them within the realm of fantasy and dreams at this point. So they have a hard time turning this into concrete reality, turning this into a conversation. So when they contact you, it does start out maybe a little bit more of a choppy conversation, maybe a little bit more of an awkward conversation. I'm not saying that they aren't going to be plenty charismatic. There's definitely a lot of charisma in them, and they're thriving on this sense of love that feels like it comes from you, but there's a lot of fear in there. That Seven of Wands in the reverse is a lack of confidence, and so is that, ultimately, so is that Three of Wands, because that's feeling, like I said, like there's some kind of prerequisite that they did not fulfill. But this feeling of the Queen of Cups, I think, is quite significant. I feel a little bit of that triggering that comes along with it sometimes that I feel with the Queen of Cups in the reverse. But I don't necessarily feel like that is what wins out. However, even though maybe it doesn't win out and it doesn't, it does not necessarily going to destroy the entire situation. The fact that they are relegating this give and take to the realm of fantasy is a little bit troubling to me, because it feels like it's still a little bit of hiding. So that tells me that someone who is inclined to come out, to communicate, is still having some trouble with that. And we know there's a Tower coming from them. We know that there is some frustration. This is that sense of frustration. The Four of Cups is seething frustration at this point, timing being bad, Queen of Wands being, it's like waking up from a dream that you were really enjoying, and now all of a sudden the dream starts to fade away, and you're forced to reckon with reality, and it having it be, one of those days where you wake up and you're not happy to reckon with reality. It's that kind of feeling where, you know what, I've got something to do today that I really don't think I'm looking forward to. Sense of frustration. There's a lot of frustration and eyes being opened in this energy, and this is maybe a little bit of both of you, but it's heavy on them. The Tower is also heavy on them, but I wouldn't put it past you to have some sort of emotionally tumultuous sort of experience, although I think it is a smaller shift than what your person would be experiencing. This Tower that comes from them is the thing that kind of shuts down their communication a little bit. And so some of the guidance that we got, I think it was yesterday, was that when this Tower comes around, they are going to need to go into that thinking cave, and it's a matter of needing to support that in them, needing to really encourage it, because this is ultimately going to be better for them. It's going to be better for you. So giving them some opportunity to go into that thinking cave and really get some thinking done. There's healing that has been done here, but there's healing that is still needed. Now, the healing that has already been done, and this is true for both of you, but once again, I'm reading it heavier as their energy. And that's the thing with this. With this shared energy, it is often heavier on their side, and we kind of invite it. If you watch these readings often, you'll see sometimes I say, give it to us a little heavier, on their energy. And I think sometimes I don't even have to say it because it's just kind of ultimately what comes out. But this is something that I think would also be shared energy, but heavier on their side. They are feeling this healing. It's unlocking them. So the Eight of Swords in the reverse is, the Four of Swords is the healing. The Eight of Swords in the reverse is the lack of overthinking. It's kind of that unlocking the thinking, allowing themselves to come out of the prison. Because with the Eight of Swords, she's not actually trapped. She could just walk out, but with the blindfold, it may not be. It's very disorienting. Standing in a puddle, not knowing how much water there actually is, being tied and blindfolded, and then surrounded kind of by these swords. So there's not actually a prison here, but there can certainly be a perception of one. Here in the reverse, that perception is kind of going away. That's a loosening up of some of those restrictions that were preventing further healing. So this is definitely moving in the right direction, which is consistent with what we've been seeing. But it's a matter of how you get there, or how they get there, and what that looks like. So that tower, I feel like, is pretty significant. It feels clear and present, and like it may be something that's happening kind of in the nearer term. So I think what I'll do is shift these up a little bit so that we can still see this one out in the front, because I think it's pretty important. I think with the concepts that are coming out here, this tower is among the most important pieces, and it's been showing up for the last couple days, but now it's showing up as something that is kind of a clear and present thing. So if you've already experienced the communication from them, be aware this may be where it starts to back off or taper off. This is not a time to take that personally, but instead to encourage their, not the distance, but the fact that they're going off to do some thinking. Give them that opportunity, and like I said, absolutely, and encouraging that. So let's see what else wants to come out for you, and just kind of what other kind of messages, because we saw them moving into a place where there might be some overthinking, but it was because of the realization that there was kind of this stability ultimately that does come from them, and that feels like a lot of pressure. Might throw them into a little bit of a panic as they now realize they have the responsibility for their own responses, or it might give them new resolve to be able to move more confidently toward what makes them happy, because this is somebody who feels like they understand more about what makes them happy now. We've got the Strength card. That feels incredible. This card feels incredible. I don't know what's happening with that. Can't wait to get in and clarify. This one does not appear to have a bad side. Here we've got the Seven of Hedgehogs. That is a lack of investment in their side, but the Strength card feels like going for broke anyway. They're just gonna, there's something here where there's a lot of fear, and they are absolutely walking with their head held high and coming out of that with no problem. So we get 4 cards again here. So we got the Two of Spears, having a hard time making a decision. It's a difficult decision. 10 of Cups in the reverse. Don't know what to do with you when they get there. Okay, so this is that same sense with the 10 of Cups. You see how when it came out over here, it was about having to kind of relegate you to that place of fantasy because they didn't quite know what to do with the situation. Well, it feels a little bit too dreamy, and it feels a little bit like they aren't really equipped to handle this in reality. So this is the thing that throws them off. If you don't hear from them, this could be this is a large component of why. Not that they don't feel that urge to reach out, not that they aren't communicating or writing the note. but they're composing offline and not in as much danger of hitting send. They've got a decision they are actively not making right now. This strength card, though, I still need to understand what's happening with this, because that is a flame that's burning in the background, and it stands to potentially overshadow all the rest of this. So we've got definitely this feeling that could potentially hold them back, where they don't feel confident. They don't feel like they know how to move this outside of the realm of fantasy, nor do they feel inclined to commit to that, which is what this decision is all about. With the Seven of Hedgehogs, it's like they should have learned something, or they should have done something sometime in the past and just kind of never got to that point where they could quite make it happen. But here with the Strength card, I'm telling you there's something very special happening with this. So that could overshadow the rest of these energies that are happening here. That is a breakthrough sort of energy that's happening with the Strength card. So let's get into it a little bit more. Interesting. So we got a breakthrough kind of energy there. Nine of Pentacles in the reverse. A lot of adversity, things that feel like they're kind of working against your person, that would slow them down, make it feel making them feel a little bit less confident. But we already know, we see the Strength card and we know that they have a fire burning in there. There is a lot of passion that kind of has a tendency to shine through, even through the fear. And that's part of why you two can still feel each other. It has a lot to do with the bond between the two of you, and there's a lot of growth that's been happening for them here. So they may be trying to avoid that growth in a lot of places and in a lot of ways, but they are ultimately learning some things, whether they like it or not. There is growth in them, and we saw that yesterday, that there was growth happening from them, such that if you do hear from them, if they are able to get past this Ten of Teacups in the reverse sort of feeling, and instead the Strength wins out, the person that reaches out to you is not the same that you most recently dealt with. There is this sense of, with the Eight of Cups, it's having to try something new, having to try a new path, a new road. It's not necessarily leaving or going someplace different. It is finding a new path and having to investigate new opportunities. And it feels very much to me like the quest that your person was supposed to be on to begin with. So we have the Three of Pentacles and the Two of Pentacles both coming out in the reverse. And then we've got the Three of Cups and the Two of Cups both coming out in the reverse. Okay, and that the Knight of Wands is separate, different message. Okay, so let's look at these. We have, like I said, the Two and Three of Cups and the Two and Three of Pentacles all coming out in the reverse. And the way that I would essentially break this down is that with this time of change that's happening for your person, so we saw the Ten of Hedgehogs. This is now a couple of pretty significant areas of this person's life that have shifted. The Three of Cups talks about their third party type of energy. So that's going to be work, home life, the types of things that are typically shifting in these situations in this person's life, things that are impacting primary relationships, the way they spend their time. They're not feeling with the Three of Pentacles as if things are coming out quite the way that they would like. They're not feeling like they are looking the way that they want to look. This all just feels very confusing, frustrating. There's a lot of static, I think, going on in this energy. A lot of static here that just sort of makes them question whether they're doing things, like how they're doing things. And it has a tendency to slow them down, okay? And so it slows down their ability to commit or to stick with something. So that you will typically see them trying to kind of avoid the obligation of having to communicate, or the requirement for explaining. I mean, there's something here about not wanting to get so far into something that they can't turn around and walk back out of it. So that is a concept that we have often seen. It often comes out with this Knight of Wands, and it's that sense of them not being able to, like, they will stand there with one foot in and one foot out, like they won't quite walk all the way in, but you know, they're still not quite out. They're not truly partnering. They're not truly putting themselves into this, and yet this bond just won't quit. This is the Lover's card. This is the sense of that bond. This is that bond that comes into their dreams on a regular basis. It's a reason why this has been relegated to kind of the realm of fantasy, because they don't feel like they're ready. They don't feel like they're qualified or ready to handle the situation, because it feels big. It feels too big, maybe. Feels overwhelmingly big. And honestly, I don't know that I blame them for that. This bond is, it does kind of feel overwhelmingly large. It feels like there's an awful lot to consider, and it's a very humbling sort of experience. I think everyone in this situation can attest to the fact that it is very humbling. Even when you have those good days, then you come back and it bowls you over again. So your person is having that experience as well, only their resilience, their emotional resilience is not quite as high as yours. So it has a tendency to cause them to maybe shrink back a little bit. And so it's that lack of confidence coming through that we see with the Seven of Wands and the Three of Wands and the, ooh, maybe I'm not so sure. Maybe since I didn't invest, maybe, you know, there's a sense of fear that kind of is holding them back here. And this is what will cause those communications to not always go so well. So I mentioned that this is a person who has a lot of charisma, and in some cases there's a lot of vulnerability coming out, but it is starting out in kind of an awkward fashion. Can't help but note that it is starting at it's starting out kind of awkward, but it's also, I think it is very much impacted by like the type of day they're having when they reach out. So I still feel like there's a lot of you that are going to receive communication, and I know that already that's been starting to happen, because I get more notes from people who have not yet received communication, but I noticed an uptick sometimes in that communication. There's definitely been an uptick here over the last few days. So I think when we get into the extended, we got to look at a couple of things here, and maybe we'll see what comes out in the part that's the for you portion of the reading. But what I think when we get into this extended, we got to look into the Strength card a little bit more deeply, and we got to look into this Ten of Teacups in the reverse a little bit more, because those are kind of like the angel and the devil sitting on their shoulder, giving them two different pieces of feedback. So we'll get into that a little bit more deeply and like I said, I will shuffle the cards right here in front of you, and then I will lay out the extended as part of the thank you. So we'll do that, and I think that's what we're going to look into. First, let's get into that you portion of the reading. So this is going to be advice for you, recommendations for areas for you to focus, given what's on the table here, and just given everything in general that we've been talking about in these last few readings. So there's been, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in between when I'm shuffling, but there's been this assignment. The meditation assignment. What are you supposed to be working on? You know, and so that assignment is, that information is really going to come from your higher self. It's going to come from that connection that you have with your higher power, but they could be very specific messages. And so this portion of the reading is meant to complement that, in addition to any other growth and work that you may be doing. Places for you to focus. Okay, suspension in the reverse. You've got some essentially new perspectives coming your way. I don't get the sense that these are perspectives that are holding you back from being able to do what you need to do, but I think they are going to make you better at doing what you're doing. And so something about the way you live your life is about to improve, and I feel like it's something you didn't even know was likely to get better. Here's another reminder with the Hierophant in the reverse. It's another reminder to get into that meditation, partially because you are looking for messages that will come from within, that will, and I'm not saying they're exclusively of your own design. I'm saying they will come from within, so that they come from within your meditation, that, which is to say they're not going to be things that necessarily come from someone who's giving you advice. So the things that you're looking to focus on right now are not pieces of advice that are going to come from somebody's tarot reading necessarily. Not mine, not someone else's. You need to specifically focus on what's happening in within your own meditations and what's happening within your own specific learnings right now. You do have some new perspectives coming out as you get in there to really think about what that means for you. That's where the more unique messages will come out, because I can give you the generic ones that say, here's something that applies to everyone in this collective. You do have new perspective coming. You do need to look within, because that's the assignment that we're getting, like, as a collective, this whole assignment here. With the Knight of Flowers, Knight of Flowers in the reverse, you may be being tested a little bit, so you may see another situation, and it's this Knight of Wands kind of energy here. So let's see. I'm going to move these up a little bit, put this down here, because I feel like this Knight of Wands does kind of really shine through. The Knight of Wands is all about, and the same with this Knight of Flowers, it's that same energy. It's that in and out energy. It's the breadcrumbing energy. And this is basically you being tested against that breadcrumbing type of energy. And this time, I think what happens is you recognize it. Like, you recognize what's happening. And so you have some choices about the way that you're going to respond to this. But the aspect of it that you choose to focus on is going to be... awesome, is going to be based upon it's going to be based upon what comes out in your meditations. So I said you had a new perspective coming, and it is. This is not that new perspective exactly, but it is basically the fact that you're putting yourself in that position to gather new perspectives. You're being encouraged to continue with that. There's something here that it's like earlier I was talking about how this Eight of Swords is them not overthinking, because the healing that they've done has they've earned the ability to not overthink something. You are earning the ability to gather some new wisdom to yourself because of because of something that you're already working through. Now, things will maybe feel like they're moving relatively quickly in this. And so with the Eight of Wands here, this is the sense of, like, this has that a little bit of that Chariot, and now you're moving energy. So with the Chariot, it's often that feeling of I sometimes will say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's a matter of having to move from where you are to get things moving. This Eight of Cups that comes in over here is your person feeling that same sort of Chariot energy. Now, what you'll notice on the Chariot card is sometimes like it's a horse-drawn carriage and they're going in a couple different directions. So you've got maybe some inconsistency about your direction. But here, I don't feel that. Here, I feel like this is the energy of motion. And your best bet is to really kind of lean into that. So we also have the Six of Wands, and then let's see what fell on the floor. We had a card fall, but it is face down. So the Six of Wands is a card of victory. This is a wonderful sort of energy, and it is what you are essentially building yourself toward. You are building yourself toward, and I've been seeing this developing in you for some time, but you've got something that you've had to kind of prove to yourself. There's been something you've had to prove to yourself, and it's going to unleash in you a whole new level of, like, you get to start working on a whole new level of issues because of what you have unlocked. So you've unlocked something very special, but the problem is that you continue to have. I mean, it's not really a problem. It's just as soon as you identify an issue and you resolve it, that problem maybe is no longer your biggest problem, but your next biggest problem is now what you want to focus on. So you have some next biggest problem to focus on. The one watch out that I'm really getting for you is almost a sense of feeling like you've got this. Watch out for a feeling of being able to be, I guess I got it earlier. Okay, so we were over here and I was thinking about how sometimes you can get to a place where you feel like you're moving right along. You feel a little bit more confident about your ability to find healing, to accomplish the healing once you've been shown the problem. This is the reminder not to get too comfortable in that, because this person has more of a hold on you because of this bond than you've maybe ever been comfortable with. Certainly the bond is stronger than they've been comfortable with, but I think you may be in for another round of something that is pulling on you pretty hard. And with this King of Wands, that's just a reminder, hey, this could get out of hand on you sometimes. Just be sure that you really respect it. Be prepared to allow for changes. Here's that balance. We'll get to that in just a second. So be prepared to accommodate changes, because the failure to accommodate changes once you have initiated them can be very dangerous. So the Nine of Wands has to do with you lowering some defenses. It's becoming less defensive. It's allowing you to initiate some of these changes. But if you don't engage in the changes, then all of a sudden you're opening yourself up for some things that could be more difficult to work through. So it's not like you're opening yourself up for things that somebody's going to come and hurt you. It's just that you are saying, hey, you're basically committing to some healing, to creating and bringing some balance, and then you will have to put your money where your mouth is. You're letting go of the other thing so that you can grab the new thing, but you have to then follow through. There's a sense of emotional follow through that feels like it needs to happen here. So watch for that. Watch for a tendency to not necessarily want to follow it through. There is a balance that you need to strike here, but just like with what we were seeing with your person, I think it was a couple of days ago, or maybe it was yesterday. I think it was a couple of days ago. There was this feeling of them seeking balance and really feeling like they wanted this balance, but not truly understanding what that meant. So not truly understanding what that balance would signify. So that means that now they're having to make some adjustments that are very uncomfortable. You have some of those uncomfortable types of adjustments to make, but you are basically, once you're committing, that's going to be that's going to be the better way to go. Also, though, recognize that you're opening yourself up for some things that are going to be more challenging for you. So don't be too sure that you have everything all figured out and that you now have, there is no one size fits all way to resolve issues. And I don't get the sense that generally you guys are that cocky that you think you just got everything all figured out. But this is a matter of, hey, things could really come in some different sizes. So just a little bit of a heads up. You might have some differently shaped challenges that are coming your way here in this energy. I don't immediately sense anything super duper negative, though. I will tell you that. So I'm going to go ahead and then move into the extended. So I'm going to pick up all the cards that we've got here. I'm actually going to utilize these two in the extended as sort of the place that we start, because that's where we're going to start to focus our messages when we get in there. So we'll keep those out. Every once in a while I'll do that. I'll have something that comes out that's just such a perfect depiction of the energy, and that I just use the card. I just use the card. So we'll, of course, look in a little bit more deeply, and we'll go beyond those questions specifically, but we're going to start with those questions and then just kind of see what else wants to come out with it. So, you guys, if you've been with me for a while, you know that when I get into the monthly thank you reading, I typically will answer a popular question, or I've given you guys tours of my space before, kind of looked at some of the where I keep my cards and things like that. So I feel like this month we needed to focus, and I mentioned this in yesterday's social media posting, but we need to focus on what this collective is up to right now. So it's about the growth that you're doing. You know, we were just talking here in this reading that we just did about this assignment that came through a couple of weeks ago. You know, I've been living my version of it in front of you. And of course, that's going to be, and you're seeing my crazy shuffle. Just know that I have to do it this way. I feel like it absolutely gets every pocket of stale energy in the cards, because I feel like I can kind of target them specifically. So if you're wondering about my weird shuffling, that's what's happening here, because I've got some cards that have managed to pull in a lot of energy and sometimes need to be clear right up in the middle of a reading. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so thinking about that growth, remember there was a meditation assignment that came through. It actually might have been in one of the extendeds, and it was about figuring out, it was like we were talking about in that reading just now. It was about figuring out what your specific area of focus needs to be, and that's going to be something that comes from within. Okay, so I said I wanted to share some insights and goals that I've had, or that I've received from this collective. And so one thing I will say is there is definitely, and I love this, there's definitely a trend towards self-care. So mine is around balance. It's around restoring health and balance to my everyday life. And I haven't heard a goal that's exactly like that, but I am definitely hearing about a lot of self-care, about a lot of kind of just making sure that you, are giving to yourself where you need to, that self-esteem increase, turning it into your self-worth, learning to redirect some of that energy to encompass a wider range. And that is advice you've gotten in these readings. Somebody contacted me and emailed and said, my goal is to redirect, is to broaden it. So you told me I didn't have to turn away from my person, but instead to just open up and accommodate more things. So maybe they are part of what I'm paying attention to, but I also have these other things. So my goal now is to redirect my energy to encompass that wider range of a couple of other things, you know. Learning to, another one that I really liked was learning to kind of reevaluate every decision in a new light. So making sure it's about being inspired by those new values that are starting to come through for some of you, and just learning to reevaluate every decision that you make in that new light. And the one thing, the other piece that I will leave you with, I've heard from several of you, and it is some version or another of slowing down on what it is that you think you know. So rather than making assumptions, making the assumption that there's going to be kind of more to learn. That's kind of the way that one of you stated it. And I thought that was really beautiful. So I just wanted to share some of the things that were happening that I've heard from this collective. Feel free. I have been posting kind of on my days. I've been taking Mondays and Thursdays off these last couple weeks. And I've been posting on those days kind of my progress and some of those thoughts. Please feel free to tack on your own progress, your own goals, and you can share or comment on other people's goals to provide some encouragement. Obviously, you know, keep it positive, and it's an opportunity then to just kind of share it, weigh in on it, maybe even think about keeping each other accountable. So you know, one of the reasons that I share it with you is because for sure you can keep me accountable. If I start doing 7 days a week readings again, you get to say, what are you thinking, Silver? So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the extended here. We have the 10 of Teacups in the reverse. This is the thing that's holding them back. Like I said, this is like the angel and devil on their shoulders. So this would be like kind of the devil side. And then the strength, we've got that on the angel side. And that angel of strength, that is a really wonderful and powerful sort of, feels vindicating almost. This strength. It's got a warmth to it. And like I was saying before, no real downside. The Ten of Teacups, though, is everything that keeps them quiet, everything that kind of keeps them from being able to truly be themselves in the situation. So let's go ahead and jump into that Ten of Teacups and learn a little bit more about that. And these are the things that is kind of holding them back. Okay, so we've got this Eight of Spears, and it's that we've seen this in some of the recent readings, that feeling of like a loose cannon. And so they have like the loose cannon thing, and they absolutely don't trust it. They feel like that they might be a little bit more inclined to make mistakes in this energy that they don't know how to, they wouldn't know how to come back from, or they don't know how to work through. There's something here that makes it feel like it gets too loose too quickly. That's part of why they feel like this has to stay within the realm of fantasy, why they feel like they can't really handle it. You have the King of Teacups. They're afraid of how it's going to make them look. We've seen this in them time and time again. Absolutely. They're afraid to partner because of the obligation that they feel is implied there. These are all the things that are pushing them away, that were kind of coming out in our reading earlier. And what do we have? I think we got a couple more cards there. I thought we were going to have maybe one more come out. We got a couple. So we've got the Wheel of Fortune, time to make a change. Feels like a change, but not one that they quite know how to manage or quite know how to think about. So there's avoidance. There's a sense of avoidance in that Wheel of Fortune, even though that is change that they don't have. Yeah, and here's the transformation card. They don't really have much of a choice but to go through this. It's something that's happening to them with it being the Wheel of Fortune. That's universe energy. That is the universe is bringing them that change and saying you're going to go through this now. With the transformation card, this is like the death card, but it focuses more on that rebirth piece of things. And although it is generally positive, they are fighting it. It's like they're fighting the change. They're fighting the they're fighting it because they don't feel comfortable, and partially because of this ego piece that plays out very strongly here. It rings out very strongly. This is that sense of needing to appear a certain way, not wanting to be emotionally weak in any way. It's kind of that's a very strong feeling here. That's a big piece, wanting to save face. So let's jump in and clarify a little bit. And we have the Ace of Pentacles, afraid to commit. Again, with that sense of being afraid to create obligation. They've learned something, but they feel like it's not enough. That concept, I feel like, has come up a couple of times here. That feeling of having learned something, but feeling like it's not quite enough, it's not sufficient. They're not ready to move on. They haven't invested enough. You know, they had that. It came up with the Seven of Pentacles in the reverse. That was one of the very first cards that came up in that middle section there. And it was about, hey, I didn't do this. I didn't do the assignment. I haven't invested in myself. We saw it earlier with the Three of Wands in the reverse. That feeling of I haven't done the prerequisites. I haven't done the things that I need to do. So there's a sense of having done some learning, but there's also a sense of maybe having more, there it is again, having more to learn. And not really feeling like there's going to be a graceful way to get to that. So they don't feel also, they know that there's going to be some scrutiny on whether they are delivering an equal give and take sort of energy. And they don't feel like they've got it in them to do that. They feel like they lack something that would allow them to do it. Like they either feel tone deaf in this area, or like some of them are definitely tone deaf. They're definitely not sure what that equal give and take of energy would ever even look like. They've not seen it done. They're don't have great examples from their childhood growing up maybe, or didn't know how to interpret the examples that they saw. Now with the Page of Wands, we have a little bit of a sense of turning away. It's avoidant, but it's avoidant specifically. It feels like an avoidant attachment style. So check that out. Avoidant attachment style is a nice way to put what's happening here. But basically, they're afraid to move forward with anything that feels like obligation or commitment. It is a very scary sort of feeling for them. And this Page of Wands in the upright is a very curious card. It's a page that has pages can be naive, but one of the cool things about them is they will often venture into areas that require some imagination, require them to have some courage. Here in the reverse, though, this is really kind of not what's shining through with this. This is someone who's feeling like they've been beaten. And there's a sense of not feeling like they can come out on top. That's one of the things I would say. Oh, Ace of Wands, though, this is self-destructive energy, and the self is fine. The everything is fine. So if the everything is fine card looks just like the Ten of Swords in this deck. And so with the Ten of Swords is often depicted very similarly, where you have somebody lying there and they've got these 10 painful swords in them. It typically depicts a painful ending. But what you've got here is the impact of the Ten of Teacups on this painful ending. So here's somebody that says everything is fine. They can't be perceived as having had too rough of a time with something. They can't be seen as having gotten out of control emotionally. Everything must be fine. That's an egoistic response, but in their case, a very important one. And here with the Ace of Wands, it's almost got kind of a it's an energy of self-destructive energy, but it's almost like in no way will we be allowing certain things to come to. I will do anything before I will allow myself to look weak in this way. There's some kind of way they don't want to look weak, and they're willing to make decisions that are would be construed as self-destructive, quite frankly. So that's a tough energy. There's something that is very difficult to get through. It's got a kernel, and it's like hail, where it's, if you've ever seen a piece of hail, if you cut it in half, it'll be layers of ice, okay? And so this is like a kernel of pain with layers of something very difficult and hard to get through on top of it. So it's not a quick fix. It's not a simple change your perspective, change your behavior. This is something that they truly have to work through, because it really is that ego that wants to protect them. And they've got to get to a place where they say, I don't require this protection. That is truly what has to happen there. And that's what's creating that Ten of Teacups defensiveness, where they have to kind of relegate this whole thing to the realm of fantasy and walk away. And that's one of the things that we've seen happening with them. However, we also have this Strength card that has come out. And like I told you, it is warm. It's positive. There's not really, this is rising above these types of fears. So let's learn a little bit more about that. Okay, so we've got the Eight of Cups, really figuring out what they want, where they're going, how they want to do things. There's a strong feeling there with the Eight of Teacups of trying something new for the, not the first time, but the first time that they are really putting their all into it, like really giving it a try. And that's interesting. That's throwing themselves into something that previously maybe they sort of hinted at maybe trying, but didn't get too serious about it. All right, so here with the Seven of Spears, this is trust. That's self-trust. That's getting in on the ground floor. That's their feeling of having gotten in on you guys got in on the ground floor. And what I mean by that, because I know I got folks that are in other countries that may be watching this subtitled or aren't necessarily familiar with that idiom. And the concept is that you got in, that your relationship developed at a time that was early enough that the time continues it just adds on something very positive. It kind of builds over time. It's like the friendships that you don't realize until decades later are very important, or the importance of them does not happen until you've had decades together and you say, well, I got in on the ground floor with this person, and So this Seven of Swords, or the Seven of Spears, that's that same energy. It's that air energy, is that concept of, I trust this on some level, even though there's something here that really needs to be worked through on, especially on that egoistic side. This is self-trust. So we've got the Six of Flowers here, and I'm going to put it here with the Seven of Spears in the reverse, because it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. It's a we're in this together sort of feeling. So the Six of Flowers is like the Six of Wands. And in the upright, it means that it's like a victory after a long battle. In this case, it feels like that battle is very much still continuing, but it's a we're in this together kind of feeling with regard to this battle. Now, here's the thing that kind of gets me. This is a please wait for me while I figure out how to unlock the emotional piece. And so the Strength card has kind of it's a very strong assumption that they are going to be able to unlock the emotional piece. But there's also a little bit of kind of a cocky assumption that you're going to sit around and hang out in this holding pattern until they get there. So we've definitely seen this from them before when we've done some Divine Masculine Messages readings where they were saying, I know I can't say this to you, but I sure would love if you could just sort of, I don't know, not go anywhere while I get this all figured out, you know. And it's because they can sense that they've got this work to do. They kind of are aware of it, but don't necessarily want to do the work. This bond, though, that's symbolized by the pair. So the pair is the equivalent of the Lover's card. And this bond that is symbolized here is the reason that this confidence is able to build, that this work is able to be done. This sense of having gotten in on the ground floor is everything has to do with this bond. It has everything to do with this bond. It is basically the only thing that I can feel that would be able to undo this energy, that would be able to overpower this energy that we just got kind of a little bit more detail on. And now I understand why I was asked to get the cards in this order, because the Strength card came out. And I thought that was going to be the first one we'd get deeper into. This is a place where you guys are moving in a positive direction, ultimately a positive direction with this. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't have to be together. You have the option to not move toward one another. Your point here, your goal here is to reconcile within yourself the issues that are causing you this triggering, to seek out the messages that come from this, to explore this bond, to understand what it is to explore everything that is holding you back and making you feel like you don't have what it takes. So that's what comes out with the Nine of Pentacles. There's this feeling of kind of not knowing. It's the feeling of lack of confidence where you just keep making mistakes that are very visible in this particular day, and it's very frustrating. It's that type of energy where you have visible mistakes that you wish maybe weren't so visible, or you wish you had proofread something before you sent it out a little bit better. Again, though, the sense of the Lovers is pervasive through this. It honestly, the Lovers card starts to feel like it's coming out even with the Strength card. And the feeling behind it is it's just confident. It's warm. I mentioned it was warm and positive, and there was kind of no downside. And I really feel like that's the case. The tricky bit is, though, there's a lot of truth that has to be absorbed. And it's happening in a place where there's already a lot of triggering. So it's almost like you would have a really hard time reconciling and reuniting with this person. Just because of the significance of this triggering. On the other hand, you're receiving messages that will help you potentially decode the pieces that create this triggering. But now, if you read into that avoidant attachment that I mentioned over here, then you're going to see some of what is triggering this person and the challenges therein. Because simply realizing that they're doing this is not going to be enough to cause them to necessarily behave in a different way. That's that's not necessarily the place that they find themselves. They've got some work to do to get to that place. And we can see that when we look in here, especially like I was saying, this is not something that is quick. This King of Teacups in the reverse, that feeling of that egoistic need to protect themselves, to pretend that everything is fine, even knowing on an intellectual level that they do this, that is not going to create the inclination in them necessarily to solve the issue. So this may be a bit of a, I guess I phrased it in a personal reading recently here, a bit of a waiting game. This waiting for this to resolve could take a little bit because it's a matter of them having to, there's that 10 of Swords, so there they are. They look incredibly similar. The only difference is the caption at the bottom. This is a person who has to figure out how to get past this. So this 10 of Swords, it shows a pain that causes them to actually be able to kind of come forward in their love a little bit. So I'll explain that. The King of Cups is potential, has great potential for emotion, but doesn't let it all fly. Okay, the King of Cups does have that tendency to need to maintain that distance, that emotional consistency, that emotional, they just have to look a certain way. Again, that's a very egoistic way to look at it, but it is something that it's a way that they operate, and it's part of the way that they can feel confident. That's what they've built their confidence on top of, is here's how I want things to look. So here's a person that can be emotional but has a tendency to have limitations on that. Now you are what draws them away from those limitations. You're able to get them to go past those limitations a little bit more. There's one of the decks that I had, it was an oracle deck, and it was just a comment that came out that said, you got closer than anyone. And that's what I'm reminded of here with the 10 of Swords. You got closer than anyone, and you would have a tendency to get closer than anyone because you're the one that cuts right through this tendency to have these emotional limitations. So whereas they may have some tendencies towards some narcissistic patterns of behavior, you are also the one that is likely to cut through a lot of that. And that's where some of this strength comes in. So this is really, when I dig a little bit more deeply into this, what I see is, yes, there's a lot of fear there that keeps them wanting to relegate this to the realm of fantasy, that wants them to, that causes them to kind of keep everything at arm's length, to maybe push off the transition that's happening for them emotionally, where we've got you more or less open arms to this transition, willing to learn what you need to learn, even if some of these lessons are just very difficult to kind of get all the way through. The bond here, though, this is all about, here's the bond that brings you back to the lesson, because it is so critical. It is something that neither of you can seem to shake. It's the thing that brings you back. And there's something very special about that, and that feeling of, like I said, having gotten in on the ground floor, that actually is going to start creating, and the Strength card is a promise of this, it's going to start creating more positive momentum, and holding you back, allowing less to hold you back in your growth. So there's something very positive that just happens because of the work that the two of you do. So as I mentioned, you don't have to come together in union. You have choices about that, and some of you will have to exercise that choice, maybe even in the near future, although I feel like it's a little bit farther off. Because they're going to come back and say, I finally get it. And you're going to say, okay, but you're still not providing what I need from you, and I know now not to accept less. You know, I mean, there are going to be some challenges like that. So let's get in and get you an oracle card. And so the oracle card is advice. If you've not seen one of the extendeds before, this is, I would say, in no way a typical extended, although I'm not sure how to characterize a typical extended because I typically go with the flow. Sometimes I'll pull out cards that I want to dig deeply into, like these. Other times we'll ask a single question and we'll just go until it's done. Sometimes it's multiple questions. Sometimes I pivot right in the middle of it and I change something up because it's just what seems like it needs to happen. So if you've never gotten extended, though, you might not have seen the oracle cards because I typically pull these out during the end of the extended. And like I said, it's just advice for you to go across the top. And it is something for you to think about given everything else that has come out on this table so far. So when we get to the end of the extended, you're looking at both the part 1 reading and the part 2 extended to apply the advice. And then sometimes it comes out and says, okay, all of that was really great, but here's where I want you to, here's the message I want to leave you with. Okay, so we've got following the path of another. Your path is being redirected to where it should be. So prepare for that. So we saw that in the first part of the reading when we did it and we looked to see, okay, you've got some change coming your way. Some of it may not be super comfortable, but it is worthy of leaning into. And so your path is being corrected to or redirected to where it should be. You are encouraged to lean into that, to go with it. It is kind of, I feel like it's one of the less comfortable lessons that you're going to be working through, but on the other hand, I feel like you make very quick work of it. You don't spend a lot of time in that uncomfortable space. So again, the worst of it does feel like it's behind you with the lessons, but recognize that some things can throw you for a loop. And if they do, allow it to happen. Open yourself to it. Say, I've got this thing by the tail, and be willing to do the work. That's the trick. That's the trick. But just know that sometimes it can kind of be a little bit intense. And you already know this, but I think just a little reminder once in a while is helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will say thank you one more time. Please continue to share your goals as you've been kind of working on those and developing those. And I know some of you have been out doing the meditating and trying to figure out, well, what is it that you're going to focus on at this time? I can't wait to hear about it. Can't wait to hear about the progress. And I will commit to continuing with mine and putting it right out there so that you guys can hold me accountable if you start to feel like it is maybe that I'm not being true to it. So that's the sort of thing that I feel like we can do for each other. And I invite you to let me know if you've got ideas. So a lot of these ideas that I was describing earlier, the learning to redirect the energy to encompass that wider range, slowing down on what you think you know, evaluating each new decision in a new light with the person that you are today, the values that you hold. These are useful not just for the person who brought or the people who brought them up. They could be useful for many of you. So I'm going to continue to broadcast some of those ideas and things that people are coming up with that are helping them, just in the event that it might help you. Of course, I won't get into identifying anybody because that would be awful. But I have zero problem with sharing things that are obviously working for other people, especially just on the off chance it might work for you. So we're going to wrap this up here, but thanks again. And I will see you again tomorrow. And we're going to look at what to expect, I think, in this energy that feels like it's coming out, because there's been a lot of transition, it's like plates shifting against each other with earthquake sort of tendencies. So we'll look into what that's bringing, and with it, I think we're looking into the June monthly reading. So I'll see if that's going to be tomorrow or if I want to push that off to another day or two. But I'll meditate on it, see how it goes. But I think we really need to look and understand what that tectonic shift sort of seems like it's bringing. So that's what we'll do when we get into it tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then.